Welcome to Blue Collar Mystics, the under-the-hood approach to the depths of human consciousness. So many mysteries, so little time, so many big words. That's why we aim to take the mystical and make it practical, usable in your everyday life. And we want to hear from you. We want to hear your story. What happened when you started asking yourself the real questions? Like, who am I? What is this? Is it a hologram? Is this some kind of weird cosmic joke? Hey, these are the questions that we are trying to get to the bottom of as we explore the final rabbit hole together here as Blue Collar Mystics. What's up, everybody? Welcome to the show. We are streaming today, doing something a little bit different and a cool afternoon hang, and I'm really excited to have my good friend from the Expanding Reality podcast, the man himself. Give it up for Brandon Thomas, everybody. Welcome to the show, my friend.
What is up, dude? Thank you so much for having me. This is fantastic, man.
No,
You're wonderful.
I am so happy to be able to hang out with you. I'm so glad that we met. We really have a lot of similar ideas, perspectives, outlooks, and I think you have just like a really grounded perspective, and very, very, very smart and astute as well, but also just intentionally well-meaning, and it's exciting and really, really cool to be able to connect.
Very sweet. What kind words, man? I received some of them. Yeah, okay. And then others, I'm just like, what? What does he mean by that? That's fascinating. Okay, that's interesting. I love it, though. I'm grateful. And the grounded part's what's been the most interesting, because I don't feel very grounded lately. I've felt like the most far off from some semblance of a direct path, kind of a thing lately. And it's been an interesting, just complete juxtapose to, what got me here and what, probably had you invite me on the show, right? But thank you so much for having me, man. This is I'm excited about this. This is a deep dive, and I'm pumped about it. Let's do it.
Yeah, I'm excited. I named it like a light in the darkness. Sometimes the light can seem really dim, and I'll be honest with you. I've had a lot of question marks come up specifically recently. A lot of unknowns that I've had to start to navigate. And it's been particularly challenging at times. It doesn't matter how much you move up, in order to grow, you have to continue to face challenges. In fact, probably harder and harder challenges as you continue to grow. So I just kind of wanted to talk with you about that. We're going to talk a little bit about where we see the future going, and maybe talk a little bit about the spiritual movement and what might be some interesting nuances and ideas of what may be to come. I'm interested to speculate a little bit with you, but also, keeping it in a perspective that is fun and overall positive. Because ultimately I've kind of, I don't want to say I've given up on trying to change the world or something, but it's like, can you really, you're one person, get over yourself. You know what I mean? It's like,
It's a lot to bear. Yeah. It's a big burden, that we're saddled with in movies and religions and all kinds of stuff, right? That it's up to you. You gotta save the world.
That's right. Yeah. If you don't
pass,
no
I
one
think
else
it's a mature position to get to, dude.
Right. Well, it almost instills this this overwhelming sense of stress and dread and responsibility or duty or obligation to like solve this riddle that really can't be. It's a Rubik's cube that you can't fix yourself anyways, right? It's like fun to speculate and think about and talk about and move in a direction, but ultimately at the end of the day, for me, it was like I had to move my focus from kind of victimhood of like, oh, this terrible structure, this hierarchy, the archons, who knows, right? Like I kind of believe the archons. That makes a lot of sense, right? Like,
Makes too much sense. It is honestly, it makes the most sense, which is what makes it so goddamn terrifying. You're just like, oh
right.
God, it's probably hell and it's probably that. Okay. And then how do you navigate that, right? How do you still go to like the DMV? It's more evident actually there. That's where you kind of like, oh God, that's where it hits you, you know? Yeah, man, it's a wild ride, and I will say that. I think a very mature position to get to is sort of this realization that you can't save everybody. You can't, I mean, shit, I'm doing my best just to save myself, right? Kind of thing. And then that's the question. Like, do you even need to be saved? What is that? What does that mean? Does that mean that the process you go through in this alchemy that you're participating in this participatory universe, you need to be rescued from? It's like, but then that's contradictory because had you not gone through it, you wouldn't have, all those kind of bootstrap paradox type things, especially in like the time travel world and all those kind of things. But I find it really interesting, and I sort of think it, and you nailed it with this sort of as you're talking about this, and I just love the way you speak, so I'm just enamored. But as you're speaking about this, I got that image from The Mummy. Remember The Mummy, dude, with Brendan Fraser? Yeah. And so in that, there was a part where they had all those mirrors, right? And if you line the mirrors up just right, they reflected off of one another and illuminated the room, right? And it was this idea that that's how they illuminated spaces without electricity and all these interesting things around corners and all that kind of stuff. So, but when you were speaking about this, I just sort of thought about that. It's interesting that we can all sort of, we know what everybody else needs, and we could see what everybody else is great at. We could see things in themselves that would propel them forward that they can't themselves see. And that's something we, I think, are doing a great job at, whether we know it or not, that we're good reflections to one another. We're good mirrors to each other. And that's why, like, you get in front of somebody, you trigger and whatever, that's sort of a reflection in you and blah, blah, blah. But it's interesting when you say save the world. And I again, like you, don't disagree that it seems an insurmountable sort of task when you sit there and look at what that means by traditional definition. But what if we sort of reframe what save the world means? What if we just decide to be really clean mirrors for one another, and we get that mummy effect where if we line up just right, I'm a mirror right to you, and then therefore you can show me something of myself that I can reflect to somebody else and they can see, and we get this sort of illumination of all corners. To stick with the metaphor, maybe we illuminate the room, and really all it's about is just seeing this place for what it is. And who knows what that is, because it's sort of that leads us into the conversation about like consensus reality, and are you even in the same place as me, and why paradigm and your RAS, your reticular activating system that's specific to each one of us, is so particularly curated by you constantly, and you change it all the time, but nobody else has the same thing. Like, it's fascinating to think it's sort of like a VR realm that we're all in together, but it's just blocks. Like, they're not, you tell it what it is. It's sort of a pareidolia as you navigate this place in an object filled environment where you're all seeing different shit. And it's just really interesting when you get down to the brass of it, which is, I mean, who knows what that is? But I find that the further you look into the whole, the deeper it gets, the darker the void gets, all that. And it's fascinating. And you mentioned it earlier, and I think this is one of the biggest distinctions I've made lately is, I was, we'll definitely talk about the spiritual community. I've entertained the spiritual concepts to a very committed discipline for well over 24 years. And I've since sort of detached or found my own way of doing things, if you will, and see that a lot of it isn't where I'm going to be going moving forward, but that also it was necessary for me to have blah, blah, blah. But when you look at that process, you're talking about ascension the whole time, right? Oh, we're ascending, we're ascending, we're ascending. And what I've come to feel that it's more like, for me and my observation, from my standpoint here, is it's more of an expansion. And with expansion, you're expanding into all of it. You're expanding into the highest highs, but the darkest darks, like the highest highs are the highest you've ever been, but the lowest lows are the lowest they've ever been. And it's a shock to your system in either direction, but you're expanding. And that's that balloon effect. You know what I mean? It's not a constant, oh, things are going awesome, things are going awesome. It's not that at all. It's, I think, if anything, the ascension kind of guides you up a mountain and then kicks you off the top of it, so that when you fall, you shatter on the ground, and whatever's left, they convince to climb another mountain. And this is the repeat process of this. But that's sort of what expansion feels like. It's got to be uncomfortable for that balloon, right? To be sat in that package the whole time, all flimsy, and now it's got air in it. And now it's, yes, it's getting bigger and new perspectives, but it's got to be uncomfortable. And you mentioned the word growth. That's that growing pains part of it. So yeah, just with a different redefining a few things, and I guess some more grounded perspectives, I've changed quite a bit. Yeah.
No, that's beautiful, man. Yeah, I love the idea of expansion, as it because it almost seems, this ascension. Oh, we're just gonna ascend, and everything will just be
Yeah.
perfect and beautiful and easy and not hard. And it's like, but that's kind of boring, right? Like, so
No, it doesn't sound boring. It just doesn't sound realistic. I think anybody telling you that, because it didn't sound boring to me at all. Like, that sounds dope as shit. Like in an
yeah, yeah,
airplane, I want the airplane to ascend, continue to do so evenly, get me to where
right,
I'm going, maybe have a little, fresh water snack on the way, right?
sure,
And then
sure.
descend at a reasonable pace. It seems that this airplane, you're constantly being kicked out of it with no parachute, and another one kind of scoops you up along the way at the last second. You're just like, fuck this, man. That's what this is.
Yeah. Yeah, I think, that's a hilarious metaphor for it. I love that. And someone says in the chat too, it's like, is it a participant universe or an observational one?
Yes. I think you're a director and actor in this thing in
Yeah,
some
100%.
capacity. I think,
Yes.
and in a weird capacity, like the spiritually bypassing part of me wants to stop there. Yes, you're a director and actor. You're the guy that set up. It's a small world after all, but each room that you go into, you decide the room before it, and you don't know what exactly it's going to be, but it's set up based on your expectations. This is where we get into the toroidal field idea that what you're seeing in front of you is then recycled and recreated, which now we're talking simulation, hologram, whatever. But all kinds of things in this. But yes, I mean, full stop there, right? But I also think that on another conversation you could have about even the spiritual side of and perspective of this is you choose everything when you get here, and it's a contract. You have a soul contract, and you know all the moves you're going to make, you know all the people you choose, your parents, you do all that stuff. But I think maybe, okay, maybe. But let's say that there's another room right behind you with a two-way mirror where there's some other conversations going on that say, dude, when he hits that point right there, oh my God, you're going to get the biggest loosh payoff. He's almost going to commit suicide for like 3 years. You're just going to get there and suck his loosh. And so, like, you could see this being a map for, death by 1,000 cuts kind of a thing, but you're going to grow and you're going to learn. And yeah, but, it starts to get like you start to take shit personally, to be honest with you. You start to be like, well, what the fuck is this? Is this really a true creation or co-collective creative, or am I being like sort of dragged through some shitty slaughterhouse? You know what I mean? Where it's like, ow, it just sort of nicks you, and then sometimes a chick takes a good pound of flesh every now and then. And you're like, how am I going to recover? And they're like, hope and love. And you're like, okay. And you get up and keep moving like an asshole. But I don't know. I mean, I'd like to, the optimistic part of me, because I'm answering you in paragraphs, but I'm also answering you in multi energetically, because there's a optimistic side that I would hope would be the thing, but also I don't put any grounded perspective in that. I'm like, and then we move on. Like, who'd win in a fight, Iron Man or Hulk? I'm like, and then I move on. You know what I mean? I don't see it being practically applied in my life. I've done the shit out of that. I've really tried, which some would tell you is the issue. And so, yeah, I think it's just an interesting perspective, because then you say maybe you are learning and growing. Maybe we're gods in training, and maybe all the things that you would like to justify your experience here, but inevitably you're going to learn, right? Because for some reason in this realm, and a lot of people talk about the time's not real, blah blah blah, and yeah, time's not real, but timing is everything. But if you think about it, we do have a perspective of what we call time, and so then one would ask, well, why the fuck is that here? Why is that useful? What's going on? And it could be said that it just time is just so you can see change over duration, and so you're given a glimpse of just a shitload of snapshots of things that are affected in order so that you can transgress this. And so in that way, you could say that reality, and essentially, yeah, you're learning and you're growing, and all of these things, and the environment then sort of tailors where you're going and how you grow and all of that. And if you're not challenged enough, you're not going to be strong enough to survive. But why does the world need to be that harsh for you to need to be strong enough to survive, right? And so there's this interesting paradox, and it's all paradox actually. And so you end up reasoning your way into these fucking massive spirals that never end. They will never, they're Fibonacci themselves, just like this whole damn place. And so then you kind of need to abandon intellect at a point and go with your heart. And then when you start doing that shit, it gets broken constantly, because that's part of learning what it's like to open that thing up. And you're just like, what is happening? It's it's the modus operandi here. And I've yet to, I get like, value, and I get it. I get it. It's just to a point, I think, and I don't know, we're about same age-ish. And so you kind of get in here and you're just you get a get off my lawn feeling about it. You're just, I want to be left alone, man. Can I
Yeah,
just fucking do my thing and be creative and not have to be creative about how to survive? Can we just do that?
right. Right? Oh,
It's a
that's
weird
so
realm,
funny.
man.
I love how
I
you
hope
just
that answered your question. I don't know.
no, dude, I love you just demonstrated just riding the paradox beautifully.
It's
Just
silly because how you gonna answer? I mean, yes. Okay, next. Maybe move on. It's such a layer. You have to go for it, right? And that's what we're here to do, and that's what this platform's all about. Thank you,
yeah, man. No, thank you.
and thanks for the question.
Yeah, yeah, 100%. I mean, what kind of started your journey into, I don't know, even saying the word journey makes me feel self-conscious, but it like but into just, exploring what's going on, exploring reality. I guess I didn't give you I gave you a personal introduction, but I didn't tell everybody about your show and stuff.
Oh yeah, we just launch into this shit. It's fine. We're brothers. We're just
Just kidding.
talking like we do on the phone. I'm just like, oh, and dude,
I
that's a dick
know.
joke, man. Yeah.
It feels the same.
Yeah, it should. Yeah, so got me started, I suppose. We'll do the quick, super quick version of it. So interesting, pretty normal childhood, all that good stuff. Had a pretty big move down to Houston, Texas. When that happened, we left a smaller environment in North Texas to a massive environment. And that was cultural shock. That was all kinds of things. And this happened my junior year, going into my junior year in high school. So I finished my last 2 years of high school and got my diploma. I don't know how, in Houston there. So in Houston was the first time that I was ever exposed to things like marijuana, alcohol, life, anything, right? Culture. Like I was so sheltered in where I grew up that it was just a wide open prairie down there, and I just hopped into all of it. At the same time, one of my parents was having a really challenging time with relocating and did not do well with that integration, and so it manifested physically in some violence in the home. And so I wanted to make sure that I stayed the primary focus of that, and I achieved that goal. And so I made sure it stayed on me. And I don't know if that perpetuated the wake up or just perpetuated whatever, but it exploded into 2 days after graduation. My grandmother, who was the dearest person in the world to me, and it's Gma, dude. She was in town watching me graduate. I was 2 days out of graduation. It exploded in a huge event that was it. And so grabbed 2 bags of everything I had in my guitar and just walked out, man. Ended up going to a payphone calling the girl that I was with at the time, moved out, moved around, did all kinds of things. Early on, though, before all of the explosive stuff in the home, I had this one integration with psychedelics, and I started tampering with marijuana and cannabis and all that, but really was interested in ecstasy. We used to do the shit out of that stuff. I had a friend who got a settlement from a lawsuit, and when he turned 18, and he was like the great, like held back, so he turned 18 when we were all together, right? And so he ended up just buying all these drugs and hotel rooms. We did everything. I did rule no needle drugs, and I've stuck to that, and I'm very proud of that. But everything else was on the table. So got crazy experimentation, had a really eye-opening experience with LSD. When I was 18, I was still in school, and this was, had to go home, face my parents at this, and it was a whole thing. Turned into what one would refer to as a bad trip. But man, for those first couple hours when I thought I was getting away with something, it was amazing and magical, and the world was illuminated. I felt connection, and I felt all this really cool shit. And I was like, wow, this is amazing. And then it turned to the awful stuff, which was again part of the experience. So still dabbled in LSD and everything like that throughout my 20s. I was a touring musician as well. I mentioned grab my guitar. I grabbed 2 bags of clothing and my guitar and walked out. And it was that guitar on the wall behind me over there. It's all carved up. That's the one I took to China. I've actually, toured China for a month with my music, 18 different cities in 28 days. It was incredible. All over the US, that type of thing. So I was going to do the music thing, right? Original songwriter, all that good stuff. So I did that while dabbling in, drugs and things like this. And I, made fun mistakes or interesting integrations into substances for the first time, like with mushrooms, for instance. I didn't know what the hell I was doing. Bought a bag from a guy, gave him $30. He gave me 14 grams. And I just go, what do I do? And he goes, just grind it up and drink it. I go, okay. He goes, put some Kool-Aid if it tastes bad. Okay. Those are the instructions, how to mellow the taste, not how much or how often, whatever. So I just threw it all in a blender and just chugged it 14 grams for my first mushroom experience, which was interesting.
Wow.
And so it's been a wild ride, man, of just questioning. And then throughout this whole time period, right when I left my parents' house, actually, my girlfriend at the time that I called stayed with her, worked for her dad in his oil business for a little bit. But she gave me the book Conversations with God by Neil Donald Walsh. And man, that thing, like, that got me kicked off into the whole idea, because I was going to be an atheist at that point, raised in a Baptist church, just saw what the example of God was in a home and, didn't care for any of that shit. Then moved out, was like, fuck God, fuck everything, just atheist, everything. I was handed this book and just blew my mind. Like, it really changed me. It gave me this whole integration into this idea of unity consciousness and all of these things. And from there, then it just, moved around, did all kinds of shit. After my second tour of China, I was going to go, or after my first tour of China, I was going to go back the second time, and got a call from the grandmother I told you about. This is about 10 years after moving out, and she just said she got sick. So I ended up moving up here, canceling that tour, moving up here and taking care of her in Fort Worth. And that's where I met my wife and all this kind of stuff. And yeah, everything's been awesome since then. It's been a wild, like I said, crazy ass ride. But and this is the super quick version again. But lately, over the past few years, especially after quitting the job to do the show full time and the publishing house and the event and thing that we're doing and all that, it's been wild, man. It's been just a really interesting journey all the way through. It's been a lot of just survive, a lot of just fucking do whatever you can kind of a thing. Never sucked a dick for anything, which is great, but definitely was, challenged in a lot of interesting ways. But yeah, and then, it ended up starting the show, and we started a show called The Up and Adam Experiment with my wife and two friends. And we had this whole, one was a Christian, one was an atheist, and my wife and I are just sort of neither of those things. And so we had this thing going on. We made it about 50 episodes. It was fun. I had the little music thing that I would do on there. I'd make these fun little songs. And this guy named DJ Frontbutt, that was my music alias name, and made some songs about 5G and pharmacy and all kinds of weird shit. So it was more like a morning radio show kind of a thing. And then when 2020 hit, everybody bailed on that. And I wanted to change the name of the show and do what I'm doing now. And I did that. Nobody else came back. So here we are. Then 3 years later, 3 and some change now on the show. So it's a quick ass version, man, but a lot down in there.
Mm-hmm. Definitely a lot. No, and it makes sense too why we definitely have some parallels as far as it seems like you really got you got a very school of hard knocks at a very young age kind of thing, going out of the house at 18. Most people probably don't have that quick of a launch into the real world, so to speak. I had a little bit more of a buffer, but yeah, no, it's amazing. It's incredible that you've managed the 14 gram thing is particularly
that was interesting. Yeah.
They said triple zero journey in the chat. That's
yeah. That was in Huntsville, Texas, Vegas, Texas, man.
Wow.
And yeah, that was, man, you talk about the visuals. I've maybe DMT has rivaled those visuals, but that was so intense, and it was so, how you doing, just right away. And I'd never experienced anything like that. I mean, LSD was just so different. And I loved mushrooms because they're so gentle, they're kind. You know what I mean? LSD kicks your ass, but I thought, oh well, I'm getting this fun high connectivity off of it, which was why I would take it with ecstasy. Like I would mix MDMA with the acid every time I took it. I mean, at most times that I took it, I would do what they called candy flipping out there, kids. And that is where you do the ecstasies, or tabs as we used to call them, and then acid at the same time. And I do like 3 tabs and a 10 strip, man, and just be gone, absolutely gone, and just explore the universe. Now, I'm not an experiencer per se, and we talk about a lot of shit on the show. I got a little green alien right over here behind me. We talk about all that kind of shit. Never met one. I've come to think that's a good thing, and we can absolutely talk about that. But yeah, I'm not an experiencer, so I didn't ever get any visit from anything. Like I've seen things that I could pareidolia my way into saying, okay, that's a machine elf, or okay, that's a kinetic group of beings that look like this because I'm tripping balls, and everything looks like I'm looking at a cloud and I'm making faces in the cloud, kind of a thing, right? And I couldn't say, oh, that's this, or oh, Archangel Michael came by and said what's up, or tickled my balls, or something like that. It just didn't happen.
Right.
And so I'm not one to externalize this type of experience. What I had was fun, and that was what it was, man. It wasn't these deep shamanistic thing. I've done ayahuasca, same thing. It was fun. I didn't get this like, I'm very, very, psychonaut, absolutely. And I did not get any of the, fucking portals opening and Jesus talking to me or anything like that. So it's interesting. I still think those stories are fantastic. And I think a great deal of this population is interacting with something. But again, I've come to sort of realize that maybe it's not that good. I don't know.
I think it's just archetypes, right? Like it's just how we internalize and visualize our reality, back to those building blocks of, just how we interpret things. It's like if you grew up with Jesus, then it makes sense. It just feels right. It's like going home. I grew up in this area. I go there and it feels familiar to me. That's kind of my analysis. I think like we are just experiencing ourselves at some magnitude of ourselves. You know what I mean? Like it's all part of the same thing. Because I also never really seen any entities other than sleep paralysis. Haven't really had anything happen with that. But I talk to people who do, and I mean, I believe them. Like for sure.
DMT was different. Have you smoked DMT ever? If you want to talk about it.
Yeah.
Okay,
I-
but that
yeah,
I saw a lot of like clowns and like ancient grandmothers and knights and like crazy, but like hundreds of foot tall, like crazy shit. Like Council of Grandmothers, this Native American tradition. They were like doing Reiki on me and shit. It was wild, dude. That DMT was very like that, but very like also I see where the clowns come in.
Well, the clowns, that's particularly interesting, right? Like, isn't that potentially like the
Demons and
big
shit.
giant Nephilim or whatever?
Yeah.
Possibly people speculate about that. And so that's interesting. For me, I would be more like geometric stuff,
Oh yeah. The geometry is there, man. That's awesome. That's mind blowing.
I never any like deity type. Well, actually, one time there was this like Star Wars thing that like looked over at me, like this like weird looking dinosaur looking thing that had a bunch of babies suckling on it, and it looked over at me and just telepathically was like, why are you back here? Didn't you get what you came for?
Damn. Okay.
Like, damn, savage. It was a good reminder of just the sort of indifference of unconditional love, if that makes sense. It's like the first time was like all blissy, and then I got that sort of weird experience where it was like, hey, don't take more than you.
Yeah, it's sort of like you're a crackhead if you come back, right? And that was Terrence McKenna's thing. If you do DMT more than once a year, you're a heavy user, is what he said.
Well, he said when you get the message, hang up the phone.
That's right. Yeah, Alan. Wasn't that? Yeah, him.
Or
or
maybe
Alan
that was
Watts or
Alan
somebody.
Watts.
Either way, he was drinking too. But either way,
a lot.
a lot, dude,
Yeah.
a lot. So
I mean,
all those people.
Yeah, it's never. Yeah, I mean, no one's perfect. I wouldn't expect. And that's kind of what I like about a lot of those figures, particularly Robert Anton Wilson, because he was just like open to exploring consciousness. It's like, okay, this is a different experience. I can form and shape my reality tunnel along these certain lines or along these certain lines. It could be, really into reggae or I could be a bodybuilder, it's like it's whatever you want, really, and exploring and dabbling in those different things. There was there wasn't a lot of shame and guilt, so like that's kind of how the church would view, I don't know. I don't even want to say it's like even drug use, but I guess it kind of is. Whatever.
Yeah. I mean, he left it growing around everywhere. It's silly. But then, if you view this place as sort of like Satan's realm, right? Then whatever grows out of the ground is sort of his call at that point, isn't it? Because some say that this is like the 1,000-year reign after Jesus has already done his thing here. Like he's already come and gone. He's been moonwalking, dude. There's good times celebrated. And he bounced. And then Satan's sort of running the show now. Have you heard about this? Have you gone into
it was like the Tartaria thing, maybe
Yes,
it was
that's
happening.
absolutely
Healing
tied into it.
waters, we're chilling. That sounds great. I mean, to your point earlier, I agree with you and take my statement back of like awesomeness, just bliss all the time. Actually, that wouldn't be too boring, would it? It would be fun.
Yeah. Yeah, resources to just create. Yeah, like to build dope cathedrals and shit. Yeah, man. And that's what's funny too is I took architecture in high school. So I've like designed a bunch of things. I've designed my future house, all that shit. Many houses. And I'm excited to like put them together and do that. It just seems like in those times they were just like, oh fuck yeah, we'll do it, mate. And then they could like sound levitate the blocks over it or pour them in molten style with your giant buddy who would just pick them up like they were fuck all and make it this amazing thing. And it just seemed like a real, what the word is resistance, right? And resistance implies that you're strengthening something. Well, in a world with zero resistance, it doesn't seem like they had many limitations. And so I don't know what we're doing by offering ourselves all of this opportunity of resistance, but it seems to be functional in some way, or we're at least convincing ourselves that that's what's going on to get through this shit, whatever that means. And it just seems like back in that time, if that's what occurred, if there was a time before the one in our physical reality that we are living in now, and even we can even go to Howdy Mikowski's work about his reset idea, and kind of Jason Bashir's touches on this too with the Phoenix cycle stuff, that 139 years or whatever, something like this. And so, but you get these cycles here where the realm itself, and we can talk flat earth if you'd like. I love that conversation. I'm not a flat earther, but I'm a critical thinker, and it's making a lot of fucking sense, man. some of the things pointed out. And so if you think about that, this is sort of an enclosed system that then just sort of governs in these principles and properties, but you could be convinced that it runs in another way. And then so many people would reinforce that it's ridiculous for you to see that. But then when you get into conspiracy theories, you start to see that, hang on, there's a shitload of idiots that back all kinds of stuff. And then you get into simulation and say, shit, there might be all NPCs and maybe they're not even real, which is why they would back all that stuff. So you get these like scalable critical thinking exercises, and that's what it's all about, dude. And that's sort of the tagline for my show is, the expansion of consciousness cleverly disguised as a podcast. Like, hey, come on my podcast. But we're like fucking crushing the universe's like ideas here and like figuring this bitch out, right? And it's a safe place for everybody to do that. You don't have to come in with your hat in hands and say, hey, I kind of have a flat earth presentation. I'm like, dude, bring that shit. Like, let's talk about this, because the idea of hidden lands and all of this just fascinate me. I mean, that's like the real Shangri-La, right? That's like the real additional, because then it alleviates the idea of scarcity. It alleviates the idea that there's a finite amount of anything, really. Because then, I mean, maybe it's out there, but then you ask like, well, what if we're like some backwoods Hunger Games thing? Have you ever seen that The Village by M. Night Shyamalan?
I haven't seen that one. No.
Okay, well, I don't want to spoil it for you. Can I go ahead and ruin it for you? Because it's okay.
Yeah,
check it out, guys. Go watch the shit. It's fascinating. It's a colony in the woods that lives like in the 18th century or something like this, but they're like in modern day, but that nobody's told them, right? And so one of them gets out. There's a no-fly zone above the area, so they can't even see airplanes and modern machinery and all this kind of shit. And it's just sort of everybody is in cahoots with that. This place, you just leave it the fuck alone. You make them think that's the greatest thing that they've got. And maybe this is what we're engaging in here, because you see all kinds of technology moving around, man. And all kinds of government officials talking about that they can't talk about things, but they can do it behind closed doors when there's obvious high technology that they're discussing. So these interesting sort of dog and pony shows about what we're capable of versus what we have access to is fascinating, man. And this gaslit idea of progress, and you start adding all of this kind of shit up, and you're just like, what are we doing here? It's a fascinating realm. Either way, it's fascinating.
No, it is. And I think about it like in the role of expansion and or development. And it's like, if we looked at a graph, you don't see progress in a linear straight line that's just
right
2% up the whole way consistently all the time. It looks like,
that airplane you keep getting fucking kicked out of,
Right, exactly. So it's possible that our ancestors, and like a lot of the spiritual stuff, it seems to come from Thoth, like Egyptian kind of stuff, which is, I think, synonymous with the Toltec traditions. That's just my personal opinion. But, a lot of the structures are similar. They're all pyramids and stuff. But it's possible that if we go back in time, that's the future, and it was more developed. But maybe they had another Tower of Babel moment, right? Where they got a little too proud and got a little too arrogant. And a lot of those secrets maybe vanished. It's a possibility, right? But overall, what the Kabbalion says, what the Law of One says, is that ultimately we are resolving into the one. There's no way ultimately not to do that. And I can't see how it couldn't resolve eventually, right? Like it takes millions and millions or billion, who knows how actual long and whatever time is, which is also like the blink of an eye and infinity, right?
So, allegedly, man. No, it's fascinating, because then you start, talking about semantics, right? Because then you're talking about definitions and things like this. And I'll come back to the idea of Ronald Reagan's '89 address to the UN, when he said how all of our differences would vanish overnight if a threat from outside would, threaten humanity. We would all bind together, right? And it's this idea of separation. It's this idea of that we're all sort of scattered, and you nailed it with this Tower of Babel idea that maybe, once we were all this united peoples, and it makes you feel like a simulation that's just entropy, because this is what entropy does. It just goes to shit after a while. Like things just fall fucking apart, man. That's the law of the universe, or the law of the way that the law says things are in this universe. There's a shitload of unknowns and potentials that could exist, that could run, but not where we are, not where we find our consciousness focused. And I don't know if that's for your benefit or theirs or both. If this is a symbiotic sort of, yes, you are going to learn, but dude, we are going to absolutely feed off your loosh, man. That's how we survive. Your fear operates this place, but it's a place of fear, so you can learn through it, right? And if that's the case, then we're not, again, is sort of the fact that it's just such a wild west of philosophies, of up for grabs, of that nobody knows. And this is why religions are so successful, because we all fucking want to, man. You know what I
Right.
mean? But nobody fucking knows, because no one's coming down going, hey, this is what's going on. And those people that say that, there's no consensus. It's consistently inconsistent, which is what everything freaky woo-woo phenomena, spiritual, anything is here. It's consistently inconsistent, which makes you feel like it's very personal or very subjective, but also it's challenging to duplicate, if at all, and then it's challenging to connect with practically, because you'll get a lot of people that want that so fucking bad that they'll do anything to join and be a part of this group of this person that says that that's what they're experiencing. It's such an it's such an interesting realm, and I do think that most of it is emotion. Like, it's an emotional realm, but our energy is, motion. Energy is just energy in motion, right? Emotion. And so if you look at it that way, your emotion fuels the ride itself. But it seems to lean to and prefer the flavor of just shit you don't prefer, right? This juxtapose this friction based ideal. And what's interesting about this is, if you think of it like a fuel system, like a fuel, just a system, right? One feeds off of the other, then it's symbiotic in nature. But then it's combustion, right? Then it's just the idea of an engine. So then one could say that then everybody who's saying, oh, well, you're just a part of the one and we're a part of a great thing, maybe, I mean, but again, you gotta get clear on the definitions of what they mean by that. And maybe they're just something huge and you're just a prawn in a fish tank on a UFO that happens to feed us with a little bit of electricity before we eat you. And then, yeah, you do become part of the one when I turn you into shit and shit you out and we eject
Right.
you out of the portal. And
Yeah.
so it's this ideal of, because cows aren't very sure and certain of what their role is in life, what their relationship is to the farmer. But when it's time to eat, that's their role, and it becomes clear. So you start to couple these ideals with, again, Howdy Mikowski's work. I know Tony Sayers, I had him on. New Ages, the New Cage, fascinating. And it's just these ideas of a soul trap and like this loosh farm. And again, man, you and I are going to get light after this, I promise. But it is an interesting thing to think about when you start to apply all the darkness here. But it's got to be fuel for something, and if nothing else, you get growth out of the deal, right?
Yeah. No, I just working on a loosh farm. I want to do like a parody of Sex Farm by
It's
Spinal
not
Tap.
as hot as it sounds. It's not. You want it to be, but it's not.
But no, I mean, I think there's, let's even say that is like it's worst case scenario, right? Like, still, okay, well, how do you deal with that, right? Like, there's a quote, I think it was Dante, that said, like, put me in the depths of hell and I'll turn it into heaven, something along those lines. I'm butchering the quote, but like the point was like he had become so strong and resilient emotionally, back to that emotion, energy and motion.
Yeah.
That's really kind of, I think, what strength and fortitude comes more down to than what we would normally think physical strength. And that was kind of his point. And so, like, let's say it is the worst case scenario, or, and whatever that is. I've been a tree farmer where I'm just, just hammering in stakes all day for like 10 hours. And I'm just like, this is never going to end. I'm just going to be on this hot ass July day, just smashing tree stakes into the ground, whatever that is. How do you make the most of that? Make it as enjoyable as you possibly can. Because I found, like, for instance, work, it doesn't really matter what your job is in a lot of ways. What matters is who you do it with more than anything. Like, I've had shitty jobs in themselves where the actual task sucked, but I was with people that I really enjoyed and we had a good time and made it fun. Whereas I've had jobs that were really not easy, or the task wasn't difficult, but I was with a bunch of people that weren't enjoying it or weren't making it fun. And then that made the job suck as a result of that and that interaction. So how to make it as enjoyable as possible. And I think we can even reference what you were talking about earlier with the idea of the mirrors, right? And like, say, okay, how do I design the one mirror I have control over, right? And then all of a sudden start reflecting that out more, and more people do that. And I think what you really have an amazing knack for, is finding people and connecting, and that was one of the positive things that we can look back over the past few years, like 2020, whatever, it broke the world up. but look at how many people came together as a result of that and found each other, right? Like there was still a positive outcome to that. Horribly, I mean, I didn't handle it well. I mean, I'll be the first to tell, I admit it all the time. I didn't handle that well, but it set me up for the next time to know that I can handle it better. And then, you know, that idea of like, even if we are in the loosh farm, like how do we make the most of the loosh farm, you know?
That's the question. And so you get also to this element, and here kind of where I don't know. So I've got a real problem with authority. Okay. I've got a real issue with being told what to do. I mean, look at this mustache. No, you're not fucking telling me what to do.
That is a mustache that tells you what to do. Right
yes. And it's I just have this real issue with authority. And whenever we start accepting the unacceptable is where I really start to get into it gets into dangerous territory with emotional intelligence and me. And then maybe this is something I'm going to get over, and maybe I'm barking up the wrong tree, and I just need to, be like everybody else and just move on down the river and not bitch about it. But it's a thorn. It's a splinter in my crawl. So it feels like this also, though, this idea of being more fortitude for the next time you get fucked because it's inevitable. That's the part I've got the issue with, and so it's like, what about that is valuable? Because then what you're learning is how just to be stronger when being in a shitty situation. But what's that preparing you for, right? What's after this? You know, what if this is nothing? And really, it's just deeper and deeper levels of hell each time, where you need to learn how to get fucked better and better by bigger and better dicks, and be okay with it. But what if you're not okay with that? What if you're not okay with the modus operandi and how this place, how we look around? Because it's those considerations, even at the highest level of intellect, where I sit there and see it still as spiritual bypassing. I'm not okay with even my own observations with how this works. And sometimes I feel like a fucking like a matrix assassin, like a coder in a game that's in the game to figure out all the flaws, you know what I mean? And I'm going back out with notes like, dude, you guys have got to fucking get rid of this child's cancer shit. What's going on? Fleas are fucking done. What are you doing here? You're fucking this place up. It's beautiful. It could be, but here's a list of reasons why it's not. But is that my fucking job? You know, is that all of our jobs? Because then you get to this point where, you know, we're talking a lot right now about communities and about how to get out and just get the fuck out of all of this shit. You know, sort of escape the matrix, not a cult and not a hippie commune, private property to where we invest in large amount of land, where we can do whatever we want. We set up a little commune in the front part of it to be able to sell goods that we produce on land. Our books that we produce, we're in a publishing house, have a bookstore right out there, cafes, things like this, but also just have our land off of all of your fucking bullshit. And to do this is insane. We're having community, you know, meetings with a lot of people in the sovereignty movement right now that aren't having success in any of the thing that they're claiming they can do. Very little are. And it's very interesting to see how ready we are for change, but how blocked we are from actually being able to achieve said change. And it looks like just this sort of, okay, it's either we're all going to get our shit together, get over the fear and get the guillotines out, or we're just not. And I don't know what the next step is from there, because then that's, you know, battling literally fear with fear, right? Now we're saying, well, we have to get these demons out of here and literally cut heads off. But like, is that the way? Is that what this is all about? And is it changeable is the other thing, because like we've talked about here, it seems to be perfect in nature. It seems to be a perfect symbiotic system that if one does beget the other, then maybe they tried running the simulation on happy vibes and like a good time. And that Tataria thing fell apart because it didn't fucking run right, or they needed to boost it up. So they found that this is actually a more palpable fuel. Maybe that's all this is. And it's, you know, we have a hard time with that, right? Like I have a fucking hard time with that. And the idea, again, that this is just sort of for you at this deep level, I haven't felt like that in a while, you know? And so a lot of people right now, and I'll just ask you this, man, are you happy, you know?
Yeah, I mean, well, it varies, you know. Somebody asked me that the other day. They were like, "Do you like yourself?" I was like, "Well, I mean, that changes a lot from moment to moment. It's kind of fleeting." I mean, yeah, I mean, I don't know if happiness is a different word than fulfillment, is a different word than joy, is a different word for, you know, grateful. I mean, the experience is worth thinking about. I mean, we do have some amazing options and resources and the fact that I can sit here and chat with you and we can stream it on the internet, I can find any song I ever wanted to listen to, like that's cool, you know. there's value there. I live a charmed life. I mean, I'm not gonna lie, I'm very fortunate to live the life that I live, and I think that nobody ever really complained their way to the top. You know, it's like you have to have boundaries, and I agree with you. It's like at a certain point, you know, like off with their heads. But I've been saying that for a long time, you know. But I don't know. I'm also not going to be. I'm not going to be leading any revolutions or insurrections or any of that kind of shit. You know what I mean? Like it's just not. So I think everyone has their own thing. I think that they can contribute. They have their own skills, gifts, talent. And if we all listen to ourselves at a deep level internally, well, that's like, you know, the Force in Star Wars, right? Like, it's like, you can ignore that, you know, and Luke doesn't have to use the Force, but it's like the more people that tap into that, the more I don't think darkness can overtake, you know, because everyone is just contributing whatever that is. And maybe some, you know, obviously somebody, if something, you know, crazy needs to happen, then I think there's people who are very capable. And I don't know. I mean, you just, at a certain point, there's so many variables and people in the world too, that I could sit here and speculate all this stuff. And I just have almost zero control over it. So I try and focus on things that I do have control over. But yeah, I mean, it's like you said, it's not fun to get fucked. Like I lost a 6-figure business in 2020, and a bunch of other things went, you know, kind of like in a way that I didn't want them to go at the time. Now that doesn't mean that I can't learn those lessons to hopefully do something better. But as to your point, is what's at the end of that, right? Like if I just get hosed again or whatever, and like you just it's like going to the casino over and over again and just losing.
And it's an addict, right? And that's insane, you know, doing the same thing and expecting things to change. You know, at what point, I don't know what the pivot is. I really don't. I'm at this fascinating point. Dark Night of the Soul is what they call this shit, apparently. And yeah, I'm at this interesting point. Somebody said it perfectly. Jennifer Matthew, congratulations, Chris Matthew and Jennifer Matthew. I just married them in Colorado. And she said to me while we were up there, you know, you're at this point where you've changed so much. You're no longer who you were. You know, you've lost the innocence and all that stuff. You're not that dude anymore, but you're not yet who you're going to be. And it's like this chrysalis phase, right? It's that part where the caterpillar tears itself down and it's in the fucking thing. But like, how many cocoons am I going to get in? You know, have I gotten any at all? And why does it feel so intense? And why does it feel so hard, especially now? You know what I'm saying? So, and I'm over the spiritual bypassing idea of, oh, it's a tower moment. It's right around the corner. Law of compensation. You got to let go of something so you can have something come in. Well, there's very few things I have left to let go of, right? And we're not knocking. The door's wide open. And so there's an interesting sort of, I think, con game involved in this with creatives and people in the imagination field as well. And I don't know what the answer is. I really don't. It just feels like we're being fucked, but I don't yet see a solution. So yeah.
Yeah, it's definitely an interesting thing to think about. And I see it sort of demonstrated to, especially like paraded around in the spiritual movement, where it is a lot of escapism. It is a lot of just avoidance and spiritual bypassing. That's really what spiritual bypassing is. It's just avoiding the truth, right? It's like, I think I sent you, and I was just watching a little bit of this lady's video, it's hard being an alien, being a human.
Yeah.
You know? The Pleiadian Galactic Federation, the channelers, you know, all this. And I'm not here to throw shade on people, but I just see the sort of new age, or whatever you want to call it, this spiritual movement getting more and more mainstream and less nuanced and actual. And I think, you know, speculating and looking into the future, you know, where does this lead? And
do you want to do that?
Yeah, kinda.
Do you want to Owen Stradamus this thing, dude? Let's do this thing. Let's do this. Have a graphic with your face over Nostradamus in one of his outfits come in right here. And I'm just like, with some music like, and then we'll talk about it.
Bootstradamus, let's go.
Bootstradamus, let's go. All right, so what do you think? You nailed it with this. Spiritualism is up in the prime here. We've talked to some network people recently about some interesting things where that's where all the money's going. That's what all the insiders are saying. The next 2 years, that's where all the money is going, to prop up the spiritual community. So what do you think?
Well, you got to be able to blame the victim somehow, right? what a better scapegoat. Is there not a better scapegoat than you couldn't manifest it? You know, because you
It's
just
your
weren't.
fault, dickhead. You
Yeah,
didn't
it's
heal your
because
childhood trauma.
it's you. It's your
It's the
fault.
new God's plan. It's
You
just
didn't manifest a cricket sandwich.
that's right.
We all manifested our cricket sandwiches with
Right.
our clink coins in the metaverse. You know what I mean? You got to meditate and do yoga so that you can strengthen your avatar in the metaverse, you know?
That's right.
In
That's
a
right.
corner, and you know, and then you can eat Cheetos and they'll look like carrots, you know what I'm saying? In the simulation thing. I don't know. I mean, I can I mean, what is the panopticon? The panopticon is like the wet dream of tyrants, right? Like that's
Yeah.
where you can see every prisoner in the jail. And that was like an ancient, like I think Roman thing. I think it was Roman, maybe it was Greek. Anyway, but that's like sort of what I see, you know, the sinister, the dark sort of future, if I'm going to project that. Right. Like, I just see spirituality being used as like a massive cope and an excuse as to why people aren't able to, you know, live their dream, you know, or do their thing. You know, you sell people this idea. And I believe in manifestation. I think it's absolutely natural, but just not in the way that it's being espoused publicly in this like mainstream law of attraction, the secret narrative, right? You know, but I do believe in it. And like one of the reasons why I like the transurfing books so much is because like this is coming from a dude who survived the whole collapse of the Soviet Union and all that shit. And he's still locked in as far as like his view of the world, that it is a reflection of our projection, that we need to change the image. You know, that's his whole thing. It's like the other day when I was telling you that I fucking almost clicked on a Russell Brand video.
We were proud that you didn't together. I was like, woo, close call, dude.
Oh man, I'm so proud of myself. That's like the biggest accomplishment,
Yes.
you know, like
We celebrate you.
I didn't use today, you know, it's like,
Yeah, not today,
99 days.
Satan. You get to turn that little fucking clock you got on the wall, right? The little flipper to
Yeah,
a new number.
it's frustrating with the challenges, but I know that it like at the end of the day, I have to just evaluate how it's going to make me feel and what those emotions are. What is the quality of those emotions, right? And if those negative emotions are more powerful and that's why they want to harvest them, well, then I don't want to give the network, the archons, the pendulums that fodder so they can just eat more off of me. You know, how can I, you know, detach from that? And the whole idea is to hopefully use that structure to help to leverage our own, you know, our own well-being and foster, you know, a better life as a result of knowing that, as opposed to not knowing it, where you're just like, and you just walk around and you have no fucking idea that all your energy is being harvested.
Gnosis, though, right? That's certainty. That would be more of a heaven. Do you think that that's available here? True Gnosis.
I don't know. I've been searching for it for as long as I could without coming up with anything finite.
A lot of people have written a lot of books about it. I've read a lot of books about it, and it's so subjective, if real at all. And that's what's so fascinating is if it's real at all, you decide what it is. The best hope is if it's real at all, you decide exactly what it is, but you need to do that here. And that you figure out, and then you sort of like life itself as each micro moment here, as above, so below, perhaps, that you create your next moment because it's a reflection of you, kind of a thing. I still have some struggles with that. Some of it could be spiritual buffs, but we'll talk. But then as you end this life, maybe you're spit back here and maybe you do the same thing over and over until you get it right, which you're never told, which is terrifying. That would be hell, right? But then another one would be that you just simply continue into another room, right? Or a new life where now this is expressed, but just in a new way, in a fourth dimension way, to where you're still going to be on your heels the whole time. And that's the ride, you know, and maybe that's it. But at what point is that nauseating? And, you know, what purpose does it serve, right? In a benevolent sort of sense, because I don't know how often Source needs to realize what it's like to get raped and murdered and drink kids' blood. You know what I mean? How often does Source need to know that? You know, oh, does the divine experiencing that through you? Okay. Yeah, it's just interesting. It's just a fascinating realm, and I'm looking for the light, man. I really am, and I know that that's an interesting thing that we have to shine ourselves. It's it's interesting, because then you get into the physics of it. How do you um introduce energy into a system that's constantly extruding energy but not, or how do you expect a system to continue that's constantly extruding energy but not receiving any in return?
Mm.
And it's this idea of hope and love, and those type of things could be the fuel that kind of keeps you going into your great fucking, right? Your next great, that glass behind you when you're making all your deals are like, yeah, we're gonna get them right here. And
Sure.
it gets to a nauseating point. And so I don't know what level that optimism comes back, but I'm looking forward to it,
Yeah, fair enough. Well, I encourage you and anyone to just continue move. I think about it all the time. Like one of my running jokes is, well, I could just quit. And it's like, well, no, I won't. I could quit comedy. Oh yeah. Sometimes I feel like quitting comedy. I'll come off stage and fucking bomb so hard. I'll be like, I should just quit. I'm terrible at this. It's fucking awful. Why am I doing this? But ultimately, I don't think I could. You know what I'm saying? I couldn't. I would quit for 2 weeks and I'd be like, I'm not getting something from that thing that I was doing. And now I have to go and do it again some more. There's things like the idea of I became an overnight success, but it only took me 10 years.
10 years, yeah.
Yeah, or whatever, right? And then there's a guy that I follow, I really like, Dr. Orion Taraban. He's got a channel called Psych Hacks. And he says to give yourself 1.5x the time. So if it normally took 10 years, then give yourself 15. Or if it normally took 2 years, give yourself 3. Because that takes a lot of pressure off as well. Those breakthroughs are rare. They just are. It's like there's another saying too, nobody leaves the ladder up. You see them on the balcony, but you don't see all the steps that they had to do to get there. When they get to the top, they just knock the ladder off.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, ultimately, we're all trying to put something into the world that we want to feel good about, that we feel like is beneficial for us and other people. These are things, ideals that I didn't know were even possible to conceive of, much less actualize, 10 years ago. I just didn't know. I didn't know that I could feel passionate about something and like doing it. I didn't know that my heart and mind could agree on anything, right? At all. I just had no concept of that. So I think the more people that explore that, right? Doesn't mean that you're going to quit your restaurant job tomorrow and then be sipping daiquiris on a beach somewhere for, and just checking your phone every once in a while, or sitting in a hammock like they did. They turned the whole coaching industry into this kind of joke over the pandemic. And it was kind of embarrassing to watch. But anyway, it doesn't mean that you can't do something you're passionate about, that you can't, back to your question about being happy. I don't know. I'm not always happy. Sometimes I'm happy. I try to focus on the positives more than I ever have, because we somehow innately have this ability to, as soon as something negative happens, react to that with a bunch of energy and emotion. But we just the good thing happens and it's it's like you got booked to open up for, Doug Benson. It's I should really celebrate that. That's a great thing, right?
But if you celebrate it too hard, you have attachment to it, and now it'll go away because you celebrated it too hard. You were too attached to the outcome of the idea.
Yeah,
right?
yeah. If you idealize it, that's absolutely true.
So
but I have a different view about it. So for me, manifesting is not about oh, I'm going to visualize this parking spot and get a fucking parking spot. It's about being in an energy, consciousness, level of consciousness, like in David Hawkins' map, where the parking spot just opens up. You know what I mean? It just happens because you're just in that sort of state, and that state attracts a lot of ease. I think, that must have been, if we could go back to Tartarian, that's the mentality, right? The ship arrives just in time. You walk right on it, slide right through. And there is an ease and effortlessness in flow that I've experienced. I don't always experience it. I don't have some magic pill that can make you go into flow. I guess ecstasy, maybe, right?
No, but yeah, it's not sustainable. Like anything, it's just not sustainable. You need the sine wave of the nauseating reality that we live in.
Exactly. But yeah, I mean, I think finding something to just be passionate about and that, feels fulfilling, even if that's just a hobby, it doesn't have to be your whole life. I mean, those are the little things. There's a lot of wisdom in a lot of the Japanese literature, kaizen and ikigai. It's not the first time that the populace has been fucked by the man, the hierarchy, like shit 500 years ago is a lot worse. There's tyrants going around just beating the shit out of people and taking whatever they wanted, right?
But see, maybe and maybe not. Maybe that's just a story that we've been told, like his story, right? But I mean, honestly, though, with yourself, everything you've just said there, are you okay with that? Are you like, is that optimal for you? Is that the best that you can see and hope for? Is the considerations you give the horrors of this place?
No, the best I can hope for is fucking crazy.
So why are
Like,
we okay with it not being fucking crazy is the question, right? What
yeah,
is preventing that? Because we all sort of give these well, at least it's not. At least it's not. And you'll
right.
have a ton of things to compare that to in your reality. Maybe they're real, maybe they're not, but you're convinced that they're real, or you at least bring them into your emotional state as if they are and react to that.
Mhm.
And even that, though, I think needs to be questioned. Again, this is where we get into well, at least 500 years ago they weren't, and we've come so far. And I'm like, but we haven't, in a lot of fucking ways. And it's the same exact thing. The realm has just rendered a couple more blinking lights and colors and dangling keys for us to sort of be not only distracted by, but drawn by energetically as well, and our attention to be focused on and distracted from self and all those things. And so again, this gets back to where we're talking about being just creative to survive here. And now our creativity has been dulled so much that we're just grateful to be able to draw a picture every now and that it's okay that we still have crayons. Because back in the day, right, Anne Frank, she didn't have fucking crayons, man. She had that ballpoint pen she wrote that thing in that actually wasn't even invented till 5 years later. That's a fun rabbit hole, you guys go ahead. But it's an interesting thing whenever you start looking at these, that again, maybe we're just giving a lot of considerations and accepting the unacceptable. And I'm just to this like fuck you dad point of all of it. Honestly, I'm not in a grace filled, oh, it's gonna be okay, optimism. I'm like, no, fuck you, like this blows. This is how I feel about it. I'm not okay, fuck this. Like and it's not. And I think that what's important is that we give each other permission to feel that, like feel
Yeah.
that it's not okay, man. And not that maybe it changes something, maybe it doesn't. Maybe we're just planting seeds here, maybe whatever. But I'd say it's just interesting when it all comes down to it, the considerations we give reality. Because, yeah, I mean, I've still got a lot to lose. I've still got limbs to hack off. I've still got a beautiful wife that I would know what to do without, that could, and it's so there's plenty still to be removed here. But the point is, I think, is like what's the focus on it? What keeps you going? And I think lately it's been apathy for me. I've just been surviving out of spite. I've been just like, fuck this place. I'm just going to keep going because the voice in my head don't want me to. That kind of thing. You know what I mean? And then you get into sort of the Gwen Towers. Let's do some conspiracy shit. Have you heard about Gwen Towers? GWEN?
I don't know anything about it.
Okay, if you look those up, let me see if I can real time on the fly here and share something with you.
Yeah, you want to be
If
able
you look
to
up Gwen Towers, then what you will discover is a lot of things that people have been calling these 5G towers, which maybe they are, maybe they're not. These are actually what's called Gwen Towers. Yeah, let's do this. I've been on StreamYard before. I can do this. Okay, share screen. Let's go. Let's go. Okay, cool. Got it. Boom. Okay, so can you see this on the screen?
Yeah.
Boom. Okay, so what a lot of people think is these 5G towers, right? You've probably seen these. Do you have one of these within a mile from your house?
Oh yeah, for
I
sure.
would say everybody who is in this, talking about things that we talk about, one of these went up at least in the past few years around you, within a mile. Sometimes probably closer, half mile. Now this is fun when they disguise them, and they're like,
the pine tree. Yeah, no,
check
look at
that
that
shit out. And what I love too is how all the other trees around this, the real ones will die around the other towers. I'm not going to hunt for a bunch of internet pictures, but it's out there. And you'll see like this tower with a bunch of other what were alive like it trees. Palm trees was the example I saw, and all the palm trees around it are bent over and fucking dead, and it's the only one standing there tall. So anyway, Gwen Towers and this Gwen technology, though, what this is all about is the idea of beaming it's this 5D 7D type technology, the sky to skull type shit that Russia allegedly invented very early on in the 50s. So the sky to skull technology ties into the ideal of Project Bluebeam as well, where they're going to be able to beam messages in your head. Now, I had a voice in my head for the past year and a half at least. About 6 months after the one went up about I don't know, 200 yards from my house. And my neighbor, he said, yeah, pay me money and put it on my property. We live out in the fucking middle of nowhere. And one of these guys went up right on the neighbor's property. And about that time, I started getting voices in my head that said, you're going to kill yourself today. And I'm not schizophrenic. I am not somebody that engages in psychedelics anymore at all. I actually quit drinking three years ago. So I'm very rarely doing anything altered states. I've actually gone fairly sober, as it were. I'm caffeine, nicotine, and cannabis, and that's it. And it was about this time, though, that I started getting these "you're going to kill yourself today's." Whenever you start looking into this technology, that's exactly what it does. It beams conversations into your head. It beams ideals. It beams scenarios. It beams that your partner's cheating on you. It beams that you should kill yourself. It beams all kinds of stuff. And this is all government regulated. This is patented. This is very out there. So again, what people are calling this 5G type technology, is really also, and if not exclusively used as this mind control technology, where they can absolutely do this. And look it up. I mean, like I said, there's patents for this shit all over the place.
Yeah.
So this is sort of another interesting thing, because how much of it is your actual doing? How much of the thoughts that you have are yours? And we know that we receive thoughts. We don't think them, is what a lot of the top scientists and studies have talked about. Tesla talked about this. But I mean, we weren't always beaming things around for us to pick up. So what if thoughts are being beamed for you? And they're very personal. They're very to you and subjective in a gaslighting way that, of course, would drive you insane. So it's this kind of shit floating around our realm as well, where I'm just like, what the fuck is this place? Is this a real thing? Where's God? You know what I'm saying? Like, what's going on here? Why is God letting this shit happen or whatever? So it's just fascinating when you start looking into stuff like that, man. And that kind of shit is just really interesting when you start thinking, oh, we're up against all kinds of stuff.
Yeah, that's wild. Yeah. I mean, the thoughts and like Buddha said, they asked Buddha where thoughts came from. And he never answered the question, but he did give a metaphor, of course, which was you're worried about where the arrow that shot you came from instead of just pulling it out.
And there's truth in that, because you do have to battle. I mean, this is like the last year and a half off psychedelics has been the most psychedelic experience I've ever had, with just what's going on in my fucking head, man.
Right.
And the fact I'm here at all is a goddamn miracle. And so that's the whole thing here, is it is a psychedelic mind realm, and it's very personal to you. And whether you're seeing Bigfoot or not, you're gonna have some crazy shit happen. And maybe it's all psychological. Maybe it's just all, that's what this is. It's just a mind fuck, right? Just all mental. It says that in the Bible. I think Romans 12, 12:3, 12:6, something like that. It says, hey, this is all mental. It's a mind fuck, basically.
Well, that's what Kabbalion says. Yeah, the world is mental. The world itself is a mental construct. It's a first primary law. And I mean, it makes a lot of sense. Like that Kabbalion 7 principle thing, the way it ties everything together. I think we are missing some key components to our ancient technology, right? Like the controls and understanding of our own psychology, right? Like we've had to rediscover that shit through like NLP and all these other things, which is brilliant that people rediscovered. But I guarantee you, if the past looks like what it may have, right? Like we would have had access to all kinds of other stronger abilities, powers. I don't know, basically what we would deem magic. But I mean, from the other perspective, a 5G tower over here is magic, especially if it's blasting negative thoughts into your head. It's something that we all battle with. It's like I make a joke. It's like I'm going to write a book called "How to Not Feel Like Shit or Want to Kill Yourself." Right? And I'm going to sell a bajillion fucking copies, because I think we all struggle. That's the one question you're not allowed to answer when you're at the psychologist or the doctor. It's like you don't answer that one honestly, and we all
because you can't give a good reason. And the most challenging part about something like that is, man, in the darkest moments, it feels like the most self-love thing you can do is end it. And because then at what point do you feel that your continuation of it is going to improve in any significant way, or that you're just feeling like you're setting yourself up for getting raped again? And you've sort of got to decide that day to day. Am I okay with that? I know things are going to happen in the future. Is it going to be worse next time? Because what's that? Homer and Bart Simpson were standing there talking, and Bart was just like, "Oh, this is the worst day of my life." And Homer corrected him and said, "The worst day of your life so far." And so the idea that you still have plenty of shit shows to look forward to is daunting, man. And in that moment, it does feel like the biggest self-love thing you can do. And that's where I'm gonna leave it, because I honestly don't have any advice other than that. Like, I can say that I empathize with that, and I can say that I'm living out of spite. And so if you guys want to give that a go with me, continue on here. You know, I have no hope that things are gonna be different, but I'm just kind of living because fuck them. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, fair enough. I mean, sometimes I think, and it's been in different reality tunnels and phases in my journey and progress journey again. But like,
Adorable.
finding out things that were completely the opposite of what I thought it would be, and viewing the world in a completely different light, multiple times, whatever you want to call it, a red pill, and they just get thicker and fatter and wide and harder to swallow. And
Nailed it.
you're just like, no, I don't want this to be the way that it is. But it just back to the whole thing. It's like, you can understand it or not. And it's up to us. Like, I want to understand what the truth is, even if it does kind of, even if it does have consequences, I still want to know. It gives me a better opportunity to navigate it that way. And yeah, I mean, I just say to everybody, you got to listen to yourself. And when that happens, when people do that in mass, it won't matter. Like, there won't be any ability to control people at that point. I don't know. I think we're kind of going toward this Westworldian sort of thing, I guess. Like, you're in a electric car that drives itself and zipping around, and I don't know. The Westworld series was done very, very well.
Oh yeah.
Very well. The fourth season, I got lost. I couldn't finish that, but the first three were incredible. And I mean, it just, wow, talk about opening up a rabbit hole just into existence itself. And like, like, am I a fucking?
Yeah, am I the fucking robot? We're the
Right.
ones that keep getting killed and reset. Yeah.
Exactly.
Because you don't feel like the participant, because you wouldn't have the same desire. Like, I don't empathize with the participants that want to come in and rape and kill and steal and cheat and all that kind of shit. I'm not into that. Like, I'm just, that's not the way I'm wired. And to exist in a chaotic place where that's the way it's wired, and that's the functional way it's set up to be profitable and successful and work, it's again, nauseating, man. It's weird. It's just really fucking weird. And again, I think, give ourselves a lot of considerations, right? Christians, which I'm not one, but Christians will say like, oh, the Bible this, and quote a lot out of the Bible, and then offer you a shrimp cocktail. And it's like, well, it says in there 8 times you're not supposed to touch that shit while you're wearing your polyester shirt of blends, right? There's a lot that's pick and choose. And again, I think there's a lot of considerations that we give for the things that we would like for them to be, but then also, maybe helps loosen you up for the next thing. You know what I'm saying? So there's a lot of sort of just, it's an interesting realm is where I'm going to just cap that sentence.
Yeah. And I'll say this too, back to your point about expanding, is that balloon. So, while this, nauseating, frustrating, stressful, emotional, toxic cocktail expands, also the capacity for joy does too.
Yeah.
Compensation and all that. So it's like, it does oddly balance out in this weird way. But I mean, I think we all have to just choose our paths as close to what we hear within our own selves as humanly possible. For me, that's the only thing that I've ever done that's had positive, or what could be considered successful, sexy results.
Yeah.
Successful results. It takes that, right? And it doesn't mean that you don't use strategies or different technologies or whatever in order to accomplish whatever that goal is. But that goal needs to be very specific, like not something that's just like in the box, so to speak. So that's what makes it difficult, right? With the whole creative aspect, because no one can tell you what you need to do. It's just, that's the crazy thing about it. So we sit here and sort of wonder, and then just do the next action.
Yeah. Have you ever heard the saying that if you mix 5 pounds of ice cream and 5 pounds of shit, you get 10 pounds of shit?
That's a good saying.
That's kind of where I'm at.
It's a very Texas type of saying.
Because think about that. I mean, okay, but because this is what the considerations are here, but there's still 5 pounds of ice cream in there. It's like, okay, but how do you know the difference? How are you going to scoop that out?
Right.
Because you're eating shit. You're right. It's mixed in there so well.
You're right.
Yeah, man. I mean, you could say there's still 5 pounds of ice cream. You saw it go in, did you? Okay. But I just saw it get blended with 5 pounds of shit. That's 10
Sure.
pounds of shit, dude.
Absolutely.
And this is where I'm at with this world. It's like I'm done. I feel in most ways I'm done polishing the turd. I'm done being okay with being fed a little bit of ice cream and mostly shit. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. I think the happiness thing, man, it's fleeting. It comes and goes. Sometimes you can choose. Sometimes you're gonna have some crazy emotional challenge that just comes out of nowhere. I'm reading this book right now by a guy named Peter Sage, and he was locked up accidentally in UK's toughest prison. And when I read the book, it's called The Inside Track by Peter Sage. And when I'm not finished with it yet, but he's basically given an account of his experience in jail, and his attitude compared to what mine was, is like, it's humiliating, because he like goes into the jail and he's like, okay, well, I trust the universe brought me here. He literally believes in the bend. He's like, what can I do? How can I help? And then he starts addressing the issues that are happening in the prison, and writes up a report and all this stuff, and then winds up winning awards after he presents that for like the reform and stuff. So he literally took the opportunity to walk his talk when everybody else would probably like, oh, he's just some self-help dude who worked with Tony Robbins or whatever, you know, but he got actually locked up by mistake. I think he got held in contempt of court or something like that. And he was in there for a handful of months. It wasn't like a long sentence or anything, but like the dude's attitude was completely unbelievable, really, like the amount of fortitude that he had. And when it comes down to it, like the Kabbalion says, it's like there's will and there's determinism, right? And the more that we choose, the more that we actively use will, the more free will we have. It's not an unlimited amount, you know. I think that maybe grows to, and then maybe if consensus reality, other people are using their free will, then it grows even more, right? Like exponentially, as above, so below. So it would make sense. Like that's expansion. But you know, we got to actively use that power. And sometimes it's fucking tough, dude. I wake up a lot of days and it just feels like I got, you know, punched in the gut or whatever. But in that book, he talks about that too. He talks about actively raising, how he has to like take an hour or 2 hours just to raise his consciousness level up above the environment of that prison, because it's so negative, and the egregore of it, because he was like talking about the energy of it as well, but that he actively had to sit down and consciously raise his vibration. It's like, that's great. Sometimes that's what I have to do too. I totally understood exactly what he meant by that. Of course, you know, my environment's a little bit nicer, but regardless, you know, I know we're all fighting those challenges. We have to just stay active, vigilant, just keep pressing forward. What is the option? Is to give up. Do you think there's consequences if you were to take that out?
Free will?
Well, you know, you were talking about like sometimes you just want to end it or whatever.
Oh yeah. I don't know, honestly. I'm not convinced of that. I think that it's interesting because it depends on which lens I'm viewing the world from. Obviously, I have people here I care about in that. That yes, I'm told would miss me, and that is true. But if this is all just sort of a simulation that you are being tested in constantly, maybe the goal is that, and maybe there's sort of like, how has he lasted this long? It's like a new record, you know, kind of thing. And maybe none of it's real at all. You know what I'm saying? Like, why didn't this dude just fucking do it? And maybe that's it, or maybe it's how long can you not kill yourself? Like that's the game. That's the quarter we put the game in. Into the game at the Rick and Morty fucking universal place, right? Roy, you know that game you can play and you go to the carpet store to get cancer and all that shit. And he was like, what? It's so real. Where are my wife and kids? Maybe it's that. But we got the try not to kill yourself game. And we're like, ooh, what's this all about? And you dared me to go in, you dick. And here I am. And, you know, you guys are all just like, how has he not done it yet? But maybe, you know, I saw this funny little meme. It was a 4-panel cartoon that was a guy like that held one of those silica packets up that said, do not eat, that come in all your leather stuff, you know, in your shoes and shit. And he was like, fuck it. And he ripped it open and ate it. And then he wakes up and there's 2 doctors, like there's a doctor and a nurse standing there and they're going, congratulations, you beat the simulation. Almost like that's, you know, again, the goal, because if you can detach from it, if you can see that really energetically the system would want to keep you here. So that, of course, they'd give you love, hope, people that would miss you, an implication that would be challenging for them if you weren't here and things like that. But really, we're just all each other's coping mechanism at the end of the day, right? And so if you look at it from that perspective, then it sort of doesn't feel like, and I'm not encouraging this. I'm not going to be like somebody, and I'm not going to feel responsible if somebody goes, well, look, I fucking said it. It's just how I feel about things. Y'all are not emotionally mature enough to handle it. I don't know what to tell you, but I will say that it sometimes feels like that's sort of what you're being pushed to do, but also that feels too obvious for me. It feels too like, well, I can't do it because it's what I've been told, sort of a, not because you say like, fuck you, dad kind of thing. Like I've had the voice, I've had the feeling, I see how easy it would be. And I'm not convinced in the afterlife consequences, because those are like anything else. I mean, you're told to behave because Santa won't bring you something and you believe it for a while. And then maybe eventually they got to get you to, well, if you do that, then, then you're going to go to hell. But, at some point, if people are in that state, usually they don't feel that it would be much different from where they are. And so in that case, you wouldn't care. But also it could be sort of one of these things to where if you are a resource, then yeah, they would want to scare the shit out of you for that not being an option, because then you're a piston out of sync. Now you're not contributing to the energy of the system. And so I don't know. It's interesting. But the other implication to that is the loose you'd leave behind from the people you did leave behind, that would extrude more in the system and you'd be like a dynamo. That's one of those conversations held in the back room. Yeah, we're going to push him so far, he's going to break right here. And he's got this amazing ability to connect. My superpower is I'm a magnet for incredible people. I don't see why lately. I'm having some self issues, but anyway, but I'm a magnet for incredible fucking people. And so, yeah, there's a lot of fucking people here that would destroy a lot of fucking lives. You know what I mean? And so I see it as being too beneficial to a system that wants me to do that. You see what I mean? I'm sort of outsmarting it in that way. And that's why I say I'm living out of spite. Is yes, that would be the easiest fucking thing to do. And it would be the most, in sometimes, self-love thing I could experience in that moment. But those are fleeting moments. And I'm always grateful I didn't afterwards. So there's importance to be had there. There's value being learned here. I just don't like the way in which it's being presented. Does that make sense? Like, I'm not a fan of this. I feel like the expansion is stretching me beyond my tolerances. And that's what that usually means. Right. But as far as cosmic implications, no, man. Archangel Michael doesn't talk to me. Aliens doesn't come see me. So I don't have some sort of extra insight that here's what anything looks like. I don't know if you just, again, take a helmet off and you're just like, holy shit. Or if you wake up and you hand the bong to your friend and you're like, man, that was crazy. Here, you try it. Like, who knows what this really is? And if any implications last at all. I mean, do you feel bad about the guy you shot in Red Dead Redemption when you turn the game off, and move on? Maybe there's, it's that much of a separation from what reality is, if that is such a thing. I don't know, man. Again, the mind fucks abound, but the answers do not. And so that's what's so fascinating about it.
No, for sure. No, I want to say, I'm an idealist though, admittedly, even regardless, in the face of whatever. But it's like, I feel like I'm here to give something, whatever that is, and I'll continue to do it. It's like the giving tree,
Yeah,
you can do that with a smile on your face and just be like, yeah, take it all, motherfucker. And then
that's the thing, that's when you troll. That's where it is, because I'm still helpful. My light's still shining. I'm still, and I don't know how, but it is. I'm still absolutely contributing to the community. I'm grateful for the people, especially this week I've been challenged, man, of giving a shit at all, but people have needed help and I've been there to help. I'm not shutting people out. I'm not being a dickhead, on purpose or anything like that. I'm not letting it dim me, even though I've never felt more that it dimmed, if that makes sense. And so, like, still, flew up to Colorado and married Chris Matthew. I did not feel like fucking doing that, man. But there I showed up and I posted. It was one of the most magical, most incredible things ever. And it was beautiful. And I'm grateful I did, but it was like a temporary and then back down into that. So it's this really interesting journey that I'm on right now. And it's going to get better. I know that. And this is just a valuable lesson I'm learning in this amount of time. And I've yet to see the importance of it or how to navigate it with grace, is what I will say. But yeah,
I think you're doing quite well.
Thanks,
like quite well. Yeah.
Thanks,
and I mean, it gets more and more challenging, but man, I love your contributions. I love what you're doing. You explore so many ideas on your show, and I'm super grateful to know you. I appreciate the opportunity to be able to connect and have these conversations in a way that's, yeah, because like most people can't candidly talk about this. They couldn't stomach it. It's too much to even be able to admit, right? Like it's the unanswerable question that you're not supposed to talk about. So I appreciate you for having the, courage to open up about it, because this is the kind of shit that really helps people, because it's like, we're not different. We're having the same experience. We're all challenged with these, impulses, ideas, emotions, whatever you want to have it, it's like, and often completely out of control. But I say, stay, as focused as you can, and always ask for help, reach out to people, because, we are all experiencing this, and, in real time, it's a fucking quagmire. Nobody can tell you what reality is. What the fuck
No, not at all. I don't even know what the fuck I am, what I'm doing here, my mission, my purpose. But Carla nailed it. Everybody in the chat's so sweet. I mean, and thank you, dude, for the sounding board. I know this is a probably darker episode than you've had in a while, and that's okay. And thank you for allowing it and holding the space and everything. Yeah, it's been challenging, man. But like I said, the light's still in there. It's not out yet. So you Archon fucks are gonna have to try better. You dumb cunts should have killed me. You just
Well, I think the way that people are connecting, it's just a natural consequence of what's going to happen. There are going to be consequences and events that shake out as a result of things, and causes and effects that are ultimately adding to, a deeper, richer experience for more and more people. And, there's a lot of things that are going to happen that are just completely outside the sphere of influence, and what are you going to do? But yeah, man, I really appreciate the time and exploring this stuff and looking into it. It's cool. And I appreciate everybody in the chat too. Thanks everybody for hanging out with us. We had a really good turnout. I hadn't been doing daytime live streams at all. So I appreciate everybody. Thanks for coming out and hanging with us while we're alive. And yeah, check out Brandon's work. It's amazing. He does a lot. He's got a lot going on. Please tell folks, what they can find when they come and search for you and the podcast and all your art.
Absolutely. We do have a lot going on. Yeah, so I've got three main focus. My heart is wide open on three main paradigms, which is the show Expanding Reality, our publishing house Rediginal Publishing, which you can see the journals behind me here. I made all of those. And then also our events, which we're starting to get in person. We're getting amongst them. So we've got the show, the publishing, and the events. And that's where my heart is, man. So that's what we're pushing forward and moving forward with our Trinity here. And that can all be found over at expandingrealitypodcast.com. So you can just head on over there, check it all out. There's links for the shows and the socials. We're on all the places. You can find the show anywhere you find podcasts and all that kind of stuff. The books can be found on Amazon and Barnes & Noble. Links all from the website. And then the event. So yes, we have a few upcoming things that we're entertaining as far as, thank you for that link in the chat there. We are entertaining Mount Shasta. We've got Mount Adams on the list there. We have Egypt on the list. We just came back from Australia about a month ago. So we're going to be doing some things there as well. So for your more global audience, we are moving about in the world. So let us know if you have an interesting spot, or if you're like, dude, come to my town and do this shit. We'd love to chat about it. So it's expandingrealitypodcast.com. Again, you can find the show everywhere, YouTube and all the other places. And yeah, that's what we got going on, man. Just thank you so much for this. This is awesome. You just hold such a special place in my heart, dude. So I just want to let everybody know too, your audience is so lucky to have you. And that really, every time we talk on the phone, man, it's like this. Like, you're just such a fucking sweetheart. You're so uplifting. Your laugh makes me laugh every single time. And I just absolutely adore you and adore what you're doing. And just want your audience to know and remind them, not that they needed it, how grateful they are to have you. So thank you, brother.
Thank you, man. I'm grateful for you. I'm so glad we got to connect, and you're doing amazing, amazing work. So don't sell yourself short. Remember to, appreciate yourself, whatever, like take a minute, like kind of like we took up top, and just reflect, because I mean, you inspire me. You're keeping me going, folks in the chat as well. And everything that you're doing, it's all cumulative, all that we all do. So man, thank you for doing it. Thanks for fighting through in the face of darkness and keeping it up. And dude, I love you, man. Thanks for coming on the show.
Love you back, brother. Thank you.
Hell yeah. Awesome. Well, thank you guys, everybody in the chat. Much, much love. Be sure to check out Brandon's stuff, his podcast. It goes deep. there's a lot of really cool. I was listening to the polymath stuff.
Oh, that's awesome.
Really
Yeah, it was a
fascinating.
5-hour show. I couldn't render in one episode, so it's 3. I didn't do that on purpose, guys. That was just how I had to get it out. I was like, God, but it's fucking awesome. Go check that out. It's badass.
It was really, really fascinating. And there's just tons of stuff. So check it out and check out the journals, the publishing, as well as the excursions, events. Yeah, we're out and about. It's awesome. It's beautiful.
Get amongst them.
All right, everybody. Thanks so much for hanging out with us. We'll see you guys next time. I'll put out a video this week. I'll film that later tonight. Have a great one.